This video is part one of the California School Dashboard presentation, and we're going to learn about the 5x5 grid matrix, and that's going to help us understand the colors and where the colors come from, because then we'll apply the 5x5 grid to create the dashboard, so we'll understand where those colors come from. We will relate the dashboard to the LCAP, and then eventually be able to predict schools eligible for technical assistance or differentiate assistance from the dashboard, and that'll come on this second video. There are 8 priority areas that are on the dashboards as you see them listed here. Our focus of our presentation is going to be right here in the red on priorities 4, 5, and 6 because those are the state priorities that will be on our dashboards. The priorities are based in two different or categorized in two areas. One's a state indicator and another one is a local indicator. These are the state indicators, while these areas over here are the local indicators. But again, our focus on this presentation is state indicator. The performance levels that the state recognizes is based on this concept of status and change. So we have this concept of status and change, and then we have these colors that arise from it, which are blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. Just want to point out, you may want to look at this as like a point system, like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, in the sense that this blue pie shape is completely filled, like 5 points, and this is like 4 points, 3, 2, and 1. This was designed so that way if someone was colorblind, that they could definitely tell the value of those shapes by how full it is. You'll never see, for instance, a blue shape with, let's say, two shapes shaded. So you'll never see blue with 2 shapes shaded. So think 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So when we go to our dashboards, we're able to access our dashboards from the CDE website. And from there, you'll go to this very fine page and be able to go ahead and type in that little box right there, your school or LEA that you're searching for. Next, you'll then decide between making sure that you're choosing the correct LEA, because there's also schools that are on the dashboard, and I just highlighted this using Compton simply because we know there's a Compton Unified and there's also a Compton Junior High located in Bakersfield, and we have Compton. Making sure that you're looking at the correct dashboard. From there, you're able to see this type of information. This is where all those 5 colors start to show up. And these 5 colors that we see on the dashboard, these colors come from a 5x5 grid, and that's what we're going to focus on this video. So if we were working at, let's say, a school site, we'd give some school sites or LEAs time to go ahead and explore, and then give them some reflection questions. Here are some reflection questions that you might offer your LEAs. You can pause the video to read those if you like. But the big idea really in this whole plan is this idea of continuous improvement system. We want to see our schools continually improve, and so there's a growth model that is prized in this California accountability system based on this concept of status and also change. And so we're going to be able to look at placement according to status over change on 5x5 grids and be able to see what the 5 colors are. So to access your 5x5 grids, you're going to do something similar to what you did on the dashboards, but in this case you're going to go ahead and click on California Model by 5x5 grids, and then from there you'll again search for your particular LEA or entity you're looking for. It could be a school site, and from there you're going to have a menu of choices that are available to you, such as suspension indicator. We have English language progress indicator, graduation indicator, English language arts grades 3 through 8 indicator, and mathematics grades 3 through 8 indicator as well. So we're going to select the math indicator. And so looking at the math indicator, you see this 5x5 grid. And so on the 5x5 grid, we have some information that we want to be aware of. We have this side of the grid. The left side of the grid is the status side. That is the status side, and the top of the grid is the change side. So status is like a picture in time where you're at in terms of these big areas of very high, medium, low, and very low. And then change is how well you did from the year prior. Did you have positive change moving to the right or negative change moving to the left? And we have these different categories along the way that are bandwidths, so to speak, as to measure that change. And if I were to make it a little bit bigger, so now if we were to look at this a little bit bigger so you can see what those numbers are, all the way to the left it says declined significantly by more than 10 points, declined by 1 to 10, maintained by less than 1 or increased by less than 5 points. Moving over to the right, we can be increased by, oh, there's a marker that's in our way. Let's see if we can erase that. Increased by 5 to less than 15 points, and then obviously over to the right, increased significantly by 15 points or more. So that's what's going across on the top. So now looking over here at the left, and I clean this up a little bit, you can see the status categories of very high of 35 or more points. High is that range of 5 below to less than 35. You can read for medium, you can see for low, and then there's also one for very low. And so that is our 5x5 grid. It's based on the concept of status and change. And so there's really two numbers we're looking at. We're looking at where they are on a status, where is the district in terms of status, and then we're also understanding what happened with change. One thing I want to note is that this is what I showed you right there was the the spring 2017 release on the 5x5 grids. They have been updated, and they've been updated, and they now have these different categories. And if you want to, I'm just going to highlight one of them so you can see how it's changed. So in this particular one, the maintained is declined by less than 3 points or increased by less than 3 points. The previous one was all about positive. You had to be positive to maintain. So there's been a shift, and a shift to the left, so to speak, that there's more a negative impact on the change at the top, which means basically less school districts will qualify for differentiated assistance, or they're going to have less of an opportunity to go to the left, so to speak. So it's depending on how you look at the situation, either positively or negatively, there has been a significant change in terms of the change portion of our 5x5 grid. So now questions to ponder. You could pause this as well, but these are some questions that we could ponder if we had the time to do it, but you can pause the video if you like. But the big idea is that we've moved from an old accountability system of one number, one API number that was an accountable number for our school districts, and we simply shifted to something much more robust, much more sophisticated. And so this is now, look at all the gadgets in this fantastic car. We have a lot of information that we're looking at now. And so, but this one concept that's real important to understand is this idea of distance from MET or distance from level 3, because this is where all those points are coming from. So there's going to be some terminology we're going to need to be familiar with, such as LOS, which is lowest obtainable scale score, HOS, which is the highest obtainable scale score, the average grade level score, and the MET scale score, and then distance from MET, which also means distance from level 3. So what does that mean? So let's look at this slide. So this slide is highlighting the different ranges of scores that the grade levels are affected by. So we have grades 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 11. And I want to point out some key information here, such as the minimum scale score. Notice how all of these numbers are different. And then we also have maximum scale scores going down to the right. And again, these are different. And because they're different, we end up having a different range. We have different ranges all the way through this. And so that's a correct statement. We end up having these different ranges. And so how do we actually compare grade levels to grade levels when we have ranges that are different going all the way across? And all the way across is this idea of we have these achievement scores. We have these achievement level scores as we go across, and they are different ranges, and you can see the ranges are increasing going across, but that's because this is level 1, level 2, level 3. We have a level 3 right here, and also a level 4. Where we want where the kids are being the line that's drawn, so to speak, of achievement and distance from level 3 is this number right here. So how a student compares to this number is this idea of distance from level 3 or this idea of distance from MET. Because distance from MET is the words that are right here, or you can talk about level 3 up here as well. So level 3 or distance from MET. That's where that's coming from. So again, this is kind of the goal, so to speak, of the threshold to get to level 3. That's important because we're going to look at how these scaled scores are interpreted for our accountability system. So using that same information that we had before, we have the loss that's listed here. We have the loss, which is the lowest obtainable. We have the Haas all the way on this side is the highest. We have also this level 3 distance from MET. That's that threshold number I showed you before, like crossing a finish line, so to speak. We want kids higher than that. But then this score right here, this is the score of where a average grade level score would meet. And so you might have 120, 300 kids or so in your average grade. You average their scores, and that is their score. And so you have this gap right here, and that gap is called distance from MET. I'm going to highlight that one more time right here. Again, we have the loss, which is the lowest obtainable score. So we have the lowest obtainable score here, and on the right we have the highest obtainable score. This is the standard. This is the standard right here that's set based on each grade level, and then we have right here on the left this average grade score, and again this idea right in here, this is the gap. This is the distance from level 3. It can be either negative or it could be on the other side and would be a positive distance from level 3. So how's the level 3 score computed? Well, if we look at this particular side, calculating the distance from level 3, whoops, let's go back, distance from level 3, we have student names on the left over here. We have student names on the left, Sally, Billy, Jason, and Debbie. This is their score that they received. They're 6th graders, and then their distance from level 3 is highlighted right here. That's their distance from level 3. These were negative, these were positive. You take the average, and so you add those all up, you get 131. Now we do this average and divide it by 4. That negative 32.3, that is the gap. For that particular group of students, their gap is negative 32.3, or their distance from level 3. So that would be considered a status number. So how do you use this information to figure out a color on the 5x5 grid? Well, again, we have this idea of status. We have this idea of status, and status is like that snapshot. It's like where they are right now. It's the 2016 distance from level 3 average will be used for the status and the initial release of the dashboard. So this is dated information. This was really about spring 2017, but the concept is still the same. And then we have the change. The change uses the current status and the prior year status for distance from level 3. Remember that for distance from level 3. So the change formula is simply the difference between those two averages. So how does this work? So we now go on, and how does this relate to the 5x5 grid? Well, here's our 5x5 grid, and we'll go back to an example. So here's the example school district, and on the school district we have Ruby Elementary School, and their distance from their status, their distance from level 3, their average as a school was negative 52. So that's 2016. And that's important information. But to understand the change, we have to really go back to the prior year. So what was their number in the prior year? The prior year was negative 89. So now we just calculate the change, which is the current average minus the prior average, and basically in numbers, this is what it is. We have negative 52, subtract the previous DF3, which is negative 89, and we have this wonderful growth of 37 points. So that's their growth. So when you go on the 5x5 grid, you're going to look at these two pieces of information. The status, here is the status, right here is negative 52. So we go down here, we come down, where are we? Very high, high, medium? No, we're low, we're right there. There's the low, so we know they're going to be in this horizontal row. And now we take a look at the change. And so here is the change, and the change is a positive 37, which is right there. And so now we just go ahead and you can see, go down this column, this direction, we go to the right, this direction. And so now the school district has a yellow. They now have a yellow for math based on this information. And so when you now go to the 5x5 grid, and let's say this was for all students, if you go to the 5x5 grid and we're looking at math, now all the way down here we have math. Here's our yellow for, well, that was English learners. Let's erase that because I said it was all students. So here's our all student category. Here's our all student category, and here is that yellow pie shape that showed up based on this analysis that we did previously on this idea of status and change. And so status and change takes place for each one of the various matrices that are here. So there's status and change information for suspension rate. Whoa, that's a little dizzy. Let's get that for suspension rate. We also have it for English learner progress. We also have it for graduation rate, college career indicator, that will be coming, English language arts, and math. And so if you're wondering where these colors are coming from, they come from this idea of 5x5 grids. The 5x5 grids are all about status and change. So this is what I've got. If you want to delve into this any deeper, there's some great resources that are available from our CDE website and some sources that others like myself have created. But this is one really about the 5x5 grids that will give you the complete story, the complete look at each one of those 5x5 grids, because they are different in the way they measure, but the overall concept of status and change is maintained in each of those grids, and that's really what the California Way is about. It's really about our schools being recognized for positive growth, and if you continue to have positive growth, your status is really going to change over time and should become an opportunity to recognize and celebrate our positive changes, and to be able to recognize those districts that even though their status might be low, they're doing great things, and to keep that positive momentum going. This is Yost trying to give you an idea of what's happening with the 5x5 grids. This was fast and rough, but hopefully this will be useful for you as you interpret your dashboards. Thank you.